It's about $7 million per year in revenue. I coach other digital marketing agencies on how to grow and scale to 7 figures and beyond in their business. I could be the dentist, the roofer, the chiropractor, the candlestick maker, or whatever comes my way. It's with the reps and the continuous doing of it that you improve, and that's really how you're going to stand out from the crowd. That's how you're going to distinguish yourself.
This is the Content Capitalists Podcast. We talk to business owners who've used video to grow their businesses to $1 million a year or more. How they did it, what worked, what didn't. Welcome to the Content Capitalists with your host, Ken Okazaki.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Content Capitalist Podcast, where I interview business owners who are bringing in at least $1 million a year, many times a lot more, and doing that off the back of great content and building a powerful brand. Today I have with me somebody who's built an agency, and the way I ran into him is I actually came across his book through some references. I asked, hey, who knows an agency owner who's actually crushing it with actually, acquiring and keeping customers online? And at that time I hadn't heard of Josh, but somebody instead of a mastermind, I said, hey, this guy Josh, who you've actually met before, he has this great book. Ordered the book, loved it. And then that's how I got to know Josh through his book, reached out to him. And now we've been, communicating off and on for some time. And he's been gracious enough to join us on the podcast. Josh Nelson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm pumped to be here.
Absolutely. So Josh, one of the reasons that I absolutely think you're a perfect fit for this is that I think there's a lot of people who are so good at the technical stuff, the processes and everything, and they think to themselves, why should I put my face out on video? Why on earth should I be doing all this stuff and competing with all these, 15, 16, maybe, 20-year-old kids? And I think that you've done a great job of, I would say, adulting up the content game, where it's no longer playing the trends and doing these funny, goofy things, but actually owning a legitimate business that's already earning money and then using the content in an intelligent way. Now, I'm not going to try to decode what you did. That's your job today. But could you start us off by giving us a brief overview? What is it you do right now? And maybe a rough number of how much money is that bringing for you, both in the agency side and the coaching side?
Yeah, so I run 2 businesses. I run Plumbing and HVAC SEO, which is my digital marketing agency that serves the plumbing and HVAC niche. And then I run a coaching business called 7 Figure Agency, where I coach other digital marketing agencies on how to grow and scale to 7 figures and beyond in their business. Combined, it's about $7 million per year in revenue, about $5 million on the agency side, and about 2.5 on the the coaching business agency side.
That's amazing. And I remember, I think this must have been 2019 or maybe 18, I'm not sure. When you started, you had already gotten the agency up to a certain run rate when you got your coaching business started. And what you told me is that, or I think when I say me, there was a group of us, but what you said was that when you hit your first million, that's when you realized, holy crap, this could actually work, and you don't have a coaching background or NLP or any of that stuff, do you?
No, I don't.
Amazing. Just for the audience to get a grip on how you got to where you are, tell us what you're doing before you started your agency, before you went into business for yourself.
Right out of high school, I decided I was going to be entrepreneurial and I was going to start a digital marketing agency. At the time, it was just a web design and hosting company. So I came right out of the gates. I was going to build that and be successful with it. Failed miserably. Had several years of working super hard, not making enough money to even pay myself. Fortunately, I was young, I was in college, and I was scrappy, so it's like I needed the money, but I was working very hard and making nothing. Right as I finished college, my wife and I got engaged, and it was like time to actually earn an income, and I had to make the hard decision, like this business I'm in, this agency that I tried to build, didn't work out. And so I wound up going into B2B. I worked at a regular job at a couple different companies. I worked at Data Impact, and I worked at ADP, and I kind of cut my teeth in sales and business development. But that whole time while I was working in corporate, I knew I wanted to get back to running a business, and I was always a student of the game. So I was listening to Audible, listening to all the books, right? Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Millionaire Mind, E-Myth Revisited, and armed with some of that information, I decided I want to give this agency game another shot. I don't know if you've ever read The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. Have you?
100 times. Yeah, I
Yeah,
used to
such a
actually
good book.
run Harv Eckerd's in Japan,
Is
and
that
I got
right?
the work. Yeah, so well, I don't want to take away from yours, but side note, I used to run a large scale events business here in Japan, and all of Harv's programs, from Millionaire Mind Intensive and everything else, the more advanced versions. I remember we used to run these events. I wasn't the trainer; we'd hire the trainer to come in, but my kids at the time, who were must have been like from 6 to 16 years old, that range, they were my crew members because I just wanted to give them an excuse to get them in the room to just absorb that. Now they actually all use that. Like they all have their systems, their buckets, and they were handing out the worksheets, but in the back they're doing it themselves and everything. It was such a great opportunity. But big fan of that book.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I read that book again and again. But one of the key things that stood out to me was to become, wealthy, right? You have to build assets, right? You have to usually start a business of some sort. But he talks about entering the corridor. You don't necessarily have to go start that business right out of the gates. Find a business that you think you want to be in that's succeeding and get a job there. So I was like, okay, let's try that. So I started looking for successful digital marketing agencies. I came across Reach Local, which at the time was doing about $250 million per year. They had made the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies. I was like, I'm going to get a job there, right? And so I got a job there. I worked there for about a year and a half as a salesperson, and I learned a lot. Like I learned exactly why my previous model had failed and exactly why they were so successful. I also found some deficiencies. I was frustrated with the results the clients got, and I was, ready to go and test it on my own. And so that was kind of where I was at. Like I worked there, I learned some things, and I decided, okay, let's start Click Inc., which is now plumbing and HVAC SEO. And that was back in like 2010 when I got back into the agency game and had since kind of built a multiple 7-figure agency from there.
Now, as I'm hearing all this, it sounds like there's a lot of activity, a bit of risk going on, like starting businesses, experimenting and trying different things. And just for the audience's sake, could you tell us how many kids you have? How many people are responsible? How many livelihoods are you responsible to support?
At this stage in the game, I have 3 kids, from as little as 1 year old all the way up to 10.
Wow. And was your wife supportive of all these things, experimenting, trying new businesses off of, and being inspired by a book and things like that?
I got to tell you, she was part of the initial failed business because we were sweethearts in high school and we were together that whole time. And I did not succeed. Like it was a very, very tough situation. And so like when she got me into a job and I was making a steady income, she liked that. Like the safety of that was a very, secure thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I said, hey, look, I think I'm ready to start a new business. I think I'm ready to go down this track. She was very resistant to it. Like she was like, no, I don't think so. Like you've got this good thing going, like there's no reason to make that kind of a risk. I even have a letter that I wrote to her, like that was like, look, here's why I want to give this a shot. I know it might not work, but I definitely want to try. And she was gracious enough to say, okay, I don't know if I believe it 100%, but let's give it a shot. And fortunately, we were able to take the risk, and now we've got the rewards to come along with that. But it was a tough decision to make. It was a big risk.
As you're talking about these business ventures and stuff, what comes to my mind is, this series of memes that go viral. I'm sure you've seen it. It says why women live longer than men. And it shows these examples of men doing all the risky things, right? That's what comes to mind. I mean, they really are the smarter one in a lot of cases. But, if a guy's got to do what a guy's got to do. Otherwise, you're going to have a very, very unfulfilled and probably eventually depressed husband. And I'm probably to the women out there. But it is scary. I can definitely vouch for that. I'd like to, before we move on to the next stage, tell me a specific story about your first business that failed. Like we all have these gut-wrenching moments, really upset client, someone threatens to sue you, or you get hacked, or I don't know what it is for you, but in the first business, could you give us, just to put some skin on this, because I want people to feel it, to know that this is real. We all go through this. Give us one example of something that happened that was a low moment.
One good example of this is, to start that business, I felt like I needed some capital. So I went to my dad. My dad's a missionary, literally like missionary in Haiti for 10 years, in France 10 years prior to that. And if you know anything about missionaries, they don't have a lot of money, right? They're out to serve. And so I convinced my dad to lend me $10,000 to get involved in this business and to kind of get it off the ground. And for him, that was a huge ask, like just an immense ask. When he figured out a way, he gave me the money. And so for me, succeeding in this business was extremely important, just to prove him right and to get that money back to him. And one of the hardest things after, years of just struggling and not making enough money to pay the bills was to have that conversation with my dad and say, hey, I'm sorry, like, I'm going to have to shut this thing down and I'm not going to be able to pay you back. And it was really hard. I had a number of sleepless nights just fearful of that conversation.
Yeah, that's really rough. And I suppose by now you've gotten around to paying him back that $10,000.
I have, yes. Fortunately,
tell me about how that conversation went.
Back with spades.
Yeah, a bit of interest added. When he started that first business, what do you think was the main thing that made the wheels fall off the axles, you might say? There's probably multiple things, but
the biggest thing was the wrong model. I was selling website design services for like a one-time fee of between $800 and $1,000, and then I was selling a hosting fee behind that of like $9 a month. Because in my mind, that was a lot of money, and that was a big deal. And so every month I would hustle. I'd make cold calls. I'd sit in B&I meetings. I'd get these website deals. And let's say I sold like 6 clients any given month. It was only about $6,000. And by the time I paid the cost that I was investing in design and everything else, there was nothing left. And so the wrong model, selling the wrong thing at the wrong price, no matter how hard I tried, was not going to succeed.
Yeah, makes sense. And looking back now, from what you know now to back then, what's like, if you could talk to your younger self, would you have told your younger self to, hey, these are some pivots you need to make? Or would you have said, like Kevin O'Leary, take this back behind the bar and shoot it?
I would have definitely made pivots, right? Because the fact is, if you could sell 5 clients, just sell them something different, it makes all the difference in the world. So I would have said, stop selling a website one-time fee for $1,000, sell a monthly recurring fee of at least $1,000 every single month. And then stop trying to sell to everybody. Choose a specific vertical. We work with plumbing and HVAC. Choose a vertical and focus on that so that you can systematize the process. You can systematize the outcomes. You can generate better results. And then make sure that your service offering isn't just brochureware, but you're actually helping the clients that you serve generate more leads, more sales, and revenue growth, which is what they actually want. And you'll be just fine, right? And, I think those are the key pivots that made all the difference between, a failed business and a business going to multiple 7 figures and making the Inc. 5000 list 4 years in a row.
Amazing. So thanks for the backstory. Let's go into what's working today. You gave us a brief overview. You've got your agency, which is thriving, and then you've got your coaching business, probably based on a lot of things, the lessons you learned in the agency and continue to learn. One thing I want to comment is that there's a lot of people who were in a certain game and they get out of it to teach the game. But I feel like everybody that does that has an expiry date on their information because things move so fast, change so fast, and they're teaching a model that worked for them in a snapshot in time. Whereas you're simultaneously maintaining both businesses, which if I was in the digital ads or local business, agency business, then I'd probably choose someone like you because you're running a real business. And if that business goes down, then I'd be like, well, there's a canary in the mine kind of thing, right? Tell us about how you split your time between the two.
One of the things I try to do as we built our agency was to systematize and put a great team in place. So over the years, I've been able to kind of separate myself from the day-to-day, right? First, I got myself out of doing the operations. Then I got myself out of doing the account management. Then I got myself doing out of sales. And then I built a leadership team. And so fortunately, I'm a big believer in EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, the book Traction. If you've never read it, I'm sure you have, Ken. And so we've got a great leadership team in place at Plumbing and HVAC SEO. And so while I'm the visionary behind the business and I'm still involved at a high level, the day-to-day runs without me. It's truly a business that continues to operate without me having to be there all day. So it's probably 20% of my time towards the agency at this point, 80% of my time on the coaching other agencies side of the equation because I've got that leadership team and because truly I have a passion for helping other agencies grow, scale, avoid a lot of the problems that I had in my first agency. So that's kind of how I split it up today.
Amazing. And the leadership team, that's something that, well, I'm speaking from my perspective. Let me ask you, would you say that's one of the failure to put one in place? Is that one of the biggest blocks from below $1 million to above $1 million, or is it something else?
100%. Once you figure out how to grow and sell and kind of deliver, if you don't put a leadership team in place that can make decisions and move things forward, you're going to be handcuffed to the business, or you'll never have the kind of business where you can step away, take the travels, pursue passion projects. And so I think having that leadership team is one of the key things you have to do. If you said like kind of at what point, it's probably somewhere about, $1.5 to $2 million. If you don't start to put a leadership team in place and kind of, let that dig into your profit a little bit, you're either going to be the person running the business and making all the decisions and doing all of the innovation, or you're going to be able to create the freedom that you're probably after so that you can take the travels and have the time to do what you want to do and pursue other passion projects.
Understood. That's amazing. I think that's the dream everybody goes into. They want to have a business. They could do the passion projects, the traveling, the volunteer work, the contributions, the mansion, the jet ski, all those things. But that never materializes unless you actually get a team to run the business. One thing I noticed that you said earlier at the beginning is you're spending a lot of time hustling when your first business, sitting in on BNI, networking, a lot of phone calls and things like that. And now you own a business that's taking about 20% of your working hours, yet somebody else is doing all the selling. Could you tell me how that scalability works? Because I have a feeling at some point in there's something to do with content, whether it's in paid ads, whether it's organic content on your website, things like that. Because I just see the separation so clearly between people who work like crazy. I think a lot of people can get to $1 million a year, solo, or selling, fulfilling everything. But to do it effectively and actually have a life, I think that there's another element needed. So tell me about how that scalability happened.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that helped us was making a shift from chasing prospects down, calling them, showing up at their office, to inbound, right? Like putting out good information, putting out great content, speaking, kind of positioning ourselves as the go-to experts. We're able to shift from chase to having clients come to us pre-positioned to buy. And have that kind of full pipeline on a consistent basis where the sales resistance is very low, close rates are very high, and it's a lot more fun, and you can absolutely remove yourself from it. Once the pipeline is there, you can train a good salesperson to take those calls, or 2 salespeople or 3 salespeople as the thing starts to build.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And tell us a bit more about the sales pipeline, breaking down resistance. Could you give us a map of when someone's never heard of you to when they're paying customers? For example, they typically see a Facebook post, a YouTube video, an ad, and I know that there are many paths that lead to Rome, right? All roads lead to Rome within your agency. But what's the most typical route that you're finding happens as far as the touch points go?
Yeah, so for us in the plumbing and HVAC space, and this is probably pretty congruent to what we show our members to do, first thing is you want to get known in the industry, right? And you want to be targeting not the entire industry, let's say plumbing and HVAC. You want to be targeting the top 10%, like the ones that are doing $1 million or more. And so the other, just don't even spend any time with them. So when you join that association, you can grab the names, phone numbers, emails, contact details. You can load them into a nurture sequence. I like to use the Dream 100 process, where we really focus on a tight group of prospects and connect with them again and again and again. So we become omnipresent. That's why I really believe you want to become omnipresent in their world, where they don't know you at all initially, but then they hear about you from the association, and then they get something in the mail, and then they get an email from you with a case study. And then they see you on your social feed, and then they hear an interview of you with somebody that's doing great things. And so they go from not knowing you to being like, man, I feel like this person is everywhere, to, wow, they seem like they've got some value to bring to the table, like they really understand this industry, to they're on your schedule saying, hey, how much does it cost to have you guys do this for us?
So you're trying to engineer everything to be ideally inbound. And is that working out more, like if we're to split it between outbound and inbound prospects, what percentage do you think is coming to you rather than you sending an ad to them?
Well, it's a little bit of both, right? I mean, so because
you're right. It's so hard to delineate
targeting. I'd probably say like 60-40, right? 60% is because they've been nurtured by us for a long time and they're finally, let's do this. 40% would be they saw an ad, or they got a call from us, or they received one of our emails.
Amazing. And right now, when people come in, like you described your previous business, what you're doing wrong. We're charging $1,000 for website, $9 for hosting. After that, could you tell us a bit about the service model that you're doing now? And I want to see the contrast.
Yeah, so I mean, today, and this has been a build over the years, we try and come to the table with a comprehensive solution. So it's not about brochureware; it's about let's figure out how to really help you dominate your local market, maximize your lead flow, grow your business. And so we're coming to the table with let's redesign the website so it's built to convert. Let's optimize it so it's showing up in the search engines. Let's run paid traffic specifically with Google Ads and local service ads. Let's put retargeting in place. So we're on top of the prospects that haven't converted, and let's use automation to follow up with our prospects, our past customers, and generate more repeat and referral business. So it's a multi-pronged approach, and it's usually going to be somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000 per month in management fees plus ad spend. And so contrast that to a one-time fee of $1,000. Even if you're only landing 5 clients per month, it really snowballs over time, especially when you're retaining at a decent level the client base.
Yeah. Now I see a recurring message, and I've done this myself, where people are saying, hey, you got to productize your service, right? Put it into a tight system. People come in, they pretty much pick off the menu, something that works for them. Then there are the people who are saying, hey, everybody has a unique situation. They need a unique solution. How do you look at that?
I think definitely it's a productized fit, right? And so I'm like, let's choose an industry. Let's figure out what the best possible thing we could do for that industry. Let's put it into a package. Let's systematize it. So it's like, hey, look, it might be custom in terms of the way that the website looks and the type of content that we write, but the process can be followed again and again and again. And I think that helps you with a couple things. First of all, it helps you with predictability. You can tell the client, look, we're going to do this, and in the first month, you're going to see that. In the first 3 months, you're going to see this, and, set proper expectations. Secondly, it gives you the ability to systematize it and remove yourself from it, right? Once you've built this process and it's in a project management system and people are clear, like when this thing's going to get done, who's going to do it, how you're going to actually execute and know that it's done well, you can remove yourself from that process and, kind of like McDonald's, like have a true service offering that gets done consistently and well and is very predictable in the outcomes.
I love it. Questions coming to mind right now. You've got your, what you said earlier, about 60% of the people that come to you are inbound from the great content you put out there, right? And then 40% outbound. Now, I was just on a call not long ago with somebody who has 3,000 inbound leads per week off of 100% organic. And this is somebody who you and I both know because they're in our mastermind. But he was talking about how just making pure content is the best ROI as far as and actually getting people for inbound leads, at least in his situation. What is your process for making sure the quality of your content is good, helpful, but also gives them motivation to reach out to you? Because there is a fine line there. If you 100% solve their problem, then why would they pay you for additional help? Whereas if you give them a hint in the right direction, and then you're the other piece of the puzzle, there's different ways to think about this. Tell me about how you coach your team around creating that kind of content that gets people to come to you and pay you money.
I think specifically in the agency model, you can really give more of the how and get away with it, because there's a lot of people selling these services, website SEO, pay-per-click, get you ranked, make your phone ring, book you solid type of stuff. But there's very few that are saying like, look, here's the strategy, here's how to do it correctly, and then here's some actual results that we've gotten for other people just like you. So our content strategy is very much like, here's the blueprint, here's how we do it, here's the outcomes, and we do that typically in the form of long webinars that we chop up into like smaller segments, case studies, and featured interviews. And so you've got here's the strategy and like the results and kind of how it works. And then you've got, here's Shamrock Plumbing in Orlando, Florida, and this is what we did for them, and this is how many calls they're getting, and this is how many trucks they have now, and this is how that's impacted their growth. So I think if you just marry those two pieces of content, you stand out significantly from the competition. And if you give them the blueprint and they literally run the type of business you're trying to sell into, 98% of the time they're like, I'm glad you showed me how to do it. I have no interest in doing that. Just tell me how much it costs for you to do it for me. And so that's worked well for us, just to be super transparent and say, hey, here's the formula. If you really want to do it on your own, more power to you.
Yeah, that's definitely. There's this guy who does YouTube car repair tutorials, and he's got so much business, but he literally shows you step by step how to do it. People, they go to the garage, they open the hood, they got the tools in the hand, just like, dang it, I'm just going to pay them to do it for me, even if they've got the video right there in their hands. Tell me about like how frequently, how often you're creating this. What's a bit of your cadence? There's batching, there's live, there's a bit of all that.
So for the agency specifically, the thing that's worked really well is basically 2 long form things every single month. One webinar where I'll go deep on a specific topic. I kind of rotate, between the 12 topics. So every month I'm doing a live webinar, send a bunch of emails about it, show up live, have conversion from the people that register for the thing and actually watch it live. But then I've also created unique content that goes up on YouTube and gets sliced up and of course gets sent out, right? So that's one long form piece of content that turns into like 10 or 11 touch points every single month. And then the second would be to do at least one case study style piece of content every single month. So that might be Zoom session like this or a meeting like this where I've got the client and asking them like, hey, where were you when you started? Where are you today? What were the things we changed? How is life different and better? Or if I can't get somebody to do that with me, just pulling up the client's metrics and saying, hey, this is the client. Look how many leads they're getting right now. This is what we did. This is where they started. So it's kind of a toggling between creating like informational content and proof content on a very consistent basis. Sometimes I do more, but the reality in the agency, just doing those 2 long form things, it feels like we're super prolific in the industry, constantly rolling out new case studies and new information that gets people to come to us pre-positioned to buy.
Yeah. And how many hours per month do you think this takes of your personal time?
Probably 3 or 4 hours.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I'm guessing you have somebody helping to do the research and prepping the content, reaching out and setting up the interviews and things like that.
Right. So, I mean, if you want to talk about kind of the way that gets happened. So I choose the topic, I put the date on the calendar. The team says, okay, let's put together the slides. They're usually kind of similar from one year to the next because I'm using the same thing, just the latest version. They put together the email sequence, the promo sequence, the Facebook ads for the live event. So all I really have to do is say, here's the date and the time and the topic. I show up, I do the webinar. Once I'm done, they take that, they chop it up, they send it out. So that's the webinar piece of the equation. The interview or the case study piece of the equation, our account managers meet with our clients every single month, and they're trying to listen in for the client that's had this inflection point or this improvement. It's, hey, look, Josh wants to feature you on the podcast and kind of share your story with the world. Or would you be up for that? And so I don't want to have a bunch every single month, but usually we're shooting for like 1 a month. They pick the day and the time that's already predetermined. I show up, I've got a series of questions that I ask. The client gives us the goods. We then take that, put it up on YouTube and the podcast, and it gets syndicated out. So that's why, I mean, there's more time maybe on the back end that's going into it, but my personal energy is somewhere between that 2 and 3 hours.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So like as far as your involvement in the business, that's probably the biggest contribution you're making, I'm guessing, because that's your face, something that the toughest to replace. The systems, the management, the client care and all that, that's your team, I'm guessing, right?
Leadership team does the operation side. I do show up for my level 10 meeting, so that's every week. There's an hour and a half meeting where we go through all the key metrics, stuck points, things we're trying to solve for. So I'm plugged in for that. I'm plugged in for the content that we put out. And then if there's an industry event or I'm speaking at, that's also where I invest time on the agency side of the equation.
Beautiful. And you also teach this model to your students in your coaching agency, your coaching business. How many people have you seen be able to replicate or even surpass you as far as revenue goes, systems and things like that?
Yeah, so I love that question. The mission for 7-Figure Agency is to help 500 agencies go to 7 figures and beyond. And when I started, it seemed like a tall claim because a lot of the agencies were smaller and they're like, 7 figures, that's ridiculous. You can't build 7 figures. As of last week or the week before, we do our member gatherings, so they call them member intensives, 3 times per year. We now have 76 agencies in the program that are at 7 figures. I think the cumulative revenue in the group is like $150 million in annualized revenue.
Wow.
And so there's a lot that are getting to the 7-figure level and multiple 7 figures. So it's working, right? It's exciting to see them plug in, take the strategy, implement, get the results. And most importantly, like the life change that happens on the back of that. A lot of these guys go from working 60 hours a week and chasing their tail to now having some more freedom, having financial abundance, hiring people, pouring into their communities, which is just amazing.
Amazing. You said 76, right?
Yep.
That's powerful. You know, what I do is I create content for a living, and I do that for a lot of people. But if once you get your next one, you got to make a post that says 77 times 7 figures as the headline.
Yeah.
And then
I love it.
that,
Yes.
that would be a milestone, and those sevens are going to look, lucky. That's what's
I
associated with
like
it.
that.
And then
I
create
like
some
that.
coffee below that. Yeah. 77 times 7 figures. That would be beautiful.
That's a
Dude,
slam
that's
dunk.
super impressive. Now, you've seen these people cross the 7-figure line so many times. For entrepreneurs, it's an emotional thing. Why does, 2 commas make a big difference in our lives? Tell me about the moment you realized, hey, I'm making $1 million a year, or I got $1 million in the bank. Do you remember that moment, or did you kind of cruise past it and then look back and say, oh, that happened a year ago? Wow.
I definitely recognized it. I had a business coach. And so the business coach I was working with at the time, we were always looking at the financials, like how much revenue is it? It wasn't intentional because I never had like I want to get this thing to $1 million and how much is that per month? But for whatever reason, I do distinctly remember taking $1 million, dividing it by 12, realizing it was 83,333 in monthly recurring revenue was kind of the mark where you needed to be on $1 million run rate. And one month we're sitting down, we're looking at the financials, and we were a little bit beyond that. And I was like, we did it. We've got a 7-figure business. And what's interesting is at that time is like the business just really accelerated, once we got past the first million to 2 million, 3 million, it just kind of grew very quickly from there.
There's that flywheel effect, because if everything is balanced, right, and you got a big heavy wheel going, then you could just keep adding to it. It goes faster and faster.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen myself too. It's absolutely beautiful when things actually work. It's an emotional thing. It's like, oh my God, it's working. I get to have a life again. What are the mistakes you're seeing, whether it's people coming into your coaching business brand new or outside, like in the agency space? All those smack my head moments where you see people teaching something or doing something and you just wish you could help them out.
I would say the obvious mistake I see a lot of agencies make is that they want to stay general, and they feel like if they go into a niche and choose a specific industry to focus on, that they're going to be limiting their opportunities. And so they try and stay general and they try and stay local. So like if I'm in Miami, a lot of agencies think, well, it's easier for me just to work the Miami market and I'll just serve anybody. Like it could be the dentist, the roofer, the chiropractor, the candlestick maker, whatever comes my way. I think what I see is they usually wind up stuck because they're reinventing the wheel for every single client. And then they're also, stuck with like lots of localized client communication. So they're driving to the client, meeting with them face to face. And that takes a lot of time and energy. And they're usually not charging enough to really commiserate, to manage that and make it productive and profitable. I don't see a lot of agencies in that local model really make it to 7 figures and multiple 7 figures. That's one thing. The other thing that I see like that's become very popular, and it's probably, counterintuitive for me to say this, but this whole idea of like, we're going to go in with this super aggressive guarantee, which is great. We're going to say, hey, well, I guarantee you X amount of leads and X result, or you don't pay anything. And I see a lot of agencies go that path and they overpromise without ever really understanding what, if they can deliver that. They're like, oh, no one's going to claim me on the refunds, so I'll just make that big claim. What I see is a lot of agencies quickly grow to like 7 figures or just kind of close to the 7-figure level on that. And then they crash and burn because they just get cancellation after cancellation after cancellation because they made this crazy promise, didn't set proper expectations, couldn't actually deliver what they were promising. I feel like if you're going to make a guarantee, you need to make sure that you can confidently deliver it. And it's hard, right? And in the agency world, there's lots of variables. There's lots of things that can go wrong. I think it's a lot more conservative to say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's the outcomes we can expect. Here's what you're going to pay, right? It's either we're going to stick through it and we're going to work through it together, or we're not. But I'm not going to like make this bold guarantee and then wind up having to refund the money and go backwards.
Yeah, amazing. I've been tempted so many times, to bring on a certain client. Hey, what if we throw in this thing or that thing? And all the times I've given into that temptation, I have regretted it so
you get
badly.
Burned, right? It sucks.
Yeah. You burn them and you get burned yourself, and both people walk away feeling like crap. It's just not fun. But when you're starting out, it's such a big temptation. Like, hey, this guy's gonna. Like, if we bring on this client, we're going to add 30% to our revenue. Wow, let's do whatever it takes. And I think the term do whatever it takes is really dangerous for growth. It's really dangerous if you don't have a strategy to back it up. Do whatever it takes within these parameters, And that's a completely different game to scale. I'm really curious to know, with your content team that's driving all the content for your multiple 7-figure agency, how many people are on your team and a little bit of how is that structured? We've got our own internal systems. We're running a lot of videos, a couple thousand every single month for our clients. But for somebody who has their own internal team, I think a lot of people will be curious, want to know if I want to build my own internal team to create content to generate more inbound leads. What's that look like? Could you walk us through that?
Yeah. So specifically on the agency side, I have a dedicated VA that's basically responsible for setting up the webinars, the promotion of the webinars, the promo sequence for that, grabbing the recording, sending it off to a freelance video editor that basically takes it, chops it up. And from a content perspective, that's the main piece, right? It's the VA and the freelance video editor, and then like a social coordinator that is posting the social stuff and engaging on social media, on our Facebook group and things like that.
So that's two people, the VA and the social media guy, or are they the same person?
Two people.
Okay. That's it. You got one VA who's managing your content, coordinating with the editor, and then you've got somebody, I'm assuming the social media person is not full-time just pushing out your content, right? That's probably
right.
Like
and so they
an
also
hour
do
to a
social
week
media
type
for
of
our
thing, right?
agency clients, and they've got their hands in a couple of different things.
That's amazing. And that plus your 2 or 3 hours a month, that's your entire content game. That is extremely efficient. And I'm going to circle back to what you said earlier about finding the right people, because there's not many people you can just, walk away and trust that they're going to take care of everything based on your systems and get it right based on that limited personnel. I'm really impressed, Josh. And I have a feeling I'm going to want to
take some time. I had to go through a couple people. I had to rewrite the processes. I had to simplify. So I think if I was writing a new promotional sequence for every one of our webinars, right, and I was creating brand new slides, I need more people involved. But a little bit of it is rinse and repeat. And it's like, okay, this same sequence, change the dates on these custom values, change these slides so they're up to date with a new graphic. I tried to simplify it as much as possible so that it can be efficient.
Yeah. One thing I noticed that you said there that I love is you're using your old content, refreshing it, and putting it back up, right? And the objection I get a lot of times when people come on with me, with my agency is, hey, I've already talked about that before. And, the thing I tell them is like a university professor, they don't come up with new material for every semester. It's new students, same material over and over. And you got to realize on social media, you have a new audience almost every single day. New people are becoming interested in your industry or you. They just heard about you. They just heard about your industry. New people are becoming a certain age where they want to get into business. And people who've heard it and they didn't decide to work with you, that's okay. They might in the future, but they went on and they're looking at somebody else's new shiny stuff, right? So I think that the analogy of a professor and a new class coming in every single year, if people think of it like that, then it's like, yeah, you don't need to reinvent the wheel or write a new volume, a new book every single time. It's a new audience you've got. And I think if you look at, the list, if we're somehow able to track every person that viewed it, I think like 50% of your audience is going to be new people year on year on year on year. And it's very consistent.
No doubt. I think it's an important point, right? I think that, and like I don't know if you've ever read the content rules. A lot of people don't want to create content because they're afraid. Like no one's like, what do I have to say that anybody would listen to? Right? And that's how I used to feel. I was like, man, I'm just a guy, right? And I've read some books on internet marketing and I've done some internet marketing, but there's so many people that are putting out content. Like no one's going to think my content is relevant or want to see it. Mm-hmm. And what the content rules basically says is 90% of the population are just consumers of content, right? They'll listen, they'll kind of perch. Only 3% of the population actually create. And so when I recognized that, I was like, well, hey, why don't I just be part of the 3%, right? To put out the content and let's see what happens, right? And I kind of put myself outside my comfort zone, started putting out content on a consistent basis. But I think that little 3% rule empowered me to feel like, hey, you know what? I'm not trying to stand out in the entire universe. I'm just trying to stand out on the 3% of people that actually put stuff out.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, as a content creator, I think I'm going to make a post called, Are You in the 3%?
Right.
That would be good. Yeah, that's amazing. We got to wrap this up in just a few minutes. But before I do, let's talk about future. We talked about the past, how you got here, what's going great right now. Where do you see the future of content creation and how that ties into especially agency owners? Now, in November 2022, and for those listening, we're in first quarter of 2023 right now. ChatGPT came out. That technology has been around for a few years, but only recently has become really easy to use and free. So it absolutely exploded and changed the game for a lot of people. And a lot of people are misusing it. Now, if you want to go into that, that's fine. But how do you see the future of content creation changing, and what are you doing about it?
Well, first of all, I think video becomes more and more relevant as a medium, right? Because with ChatGPT and all these different AI platforms that are coming out, it's going to be easier and easier for content to be spun up. The most unique form of content is going to be somebody with a personality and a unique thought in their head on camera speaking, whether that's for short form videos or for webinars or things like that. I think that's absolutely going to help you stand out from the competition. I also think that you need to embrace marketing automation, because the people, the agencies, the entrepreneurs that understand how to use it as the tool to come up with better headlines, to come up with better scripts, to come up with better hooks, are going to be, light years ahead. And so I think, the future is leveraging those tools smartly, and then creating great video content that really makes you stand out and distinctive and unique in your marketplace.
Would you be willing to give a bit of a sneak peek into how you might be adjusting your process based on the technology or the landscape? Right now, as we speak, I think TikTok is still going through depositions, right, in the US. That's just blowing up on my feed. Any of those things affecting how your strategy for the future is looking?
I think, for the agency specifically, just leveraging the tools, I think is a big thing. Like when we come up with our topics, like the titles for our webinars, the topics that we're going to use to roll out our case study, rather than just using the same standard topic, you can use ChatGPT and these other platforms to come up with cool angles and hooks to really make it more unique. And then when you post about it on social media, you can come up with a lot of really great content in a short window of time to get that stuff put out. The other thing we're doing, like on the agency coaching side of the things, is we're constantly doing trainings and things like that. And usually we just take the recording and the slides and we put that up. Where we're moving to is making sure everything's transcribed. We've got short codes that kind of sync to everything, and where we can grab snippets that are useful and quickly grab that and use that as content for promotion. I think, there's going to be a great angle in the coaching side of things to be able to leverage your content more quickly and more iteratively to be even more prolific with less effort.
I love that. I think that if you take one thing away, and I'm talking to the listeners here, is what Josh is talking about, what's working now, what's going on in the future, but then weaving that into an actual system after you prove it works. Because you said in the beginning, like once you figure out how to sell, and if you make a system first, and I'm finding this mistake I made a few times. I think of a great idea. In my head, it's perfect. I create a system around it, and then I realize I wasted all the time on the system because that idea didn't pan out, right? And what you said there is, you just talked about some ideas. You throw it up there, you try it, and then if it works, then it's worth locking it down into a process, training someone to do it for you. And there's that balance where you're a stair-step ladder thing, where it's just, right, left, keep progressing upwards. Appreciate that. Yeah. Josh, I have a feeling that there's going to be some listeners here who are involved in an agency or thinking about starting an agency or actually already own one. If they want to find out more about you, potentially work with you, what's the best place for them to get started?
Best place to go to sevenfigureagency.com. There you can kind of connect with me. I give out a free copy of our book, The Seven Figure Agency Roadmap, which Ken referenced earlier. If you go to sevenfigureagency.com/book, I'll send the copy out to you. And this is the roadmap. Like literally, if you just took this and followed it, and you're serious about growing an agency to multiple seven figures, you've got everything you need right there.
Guys, I will double down about getting that book, because I personally bought it. And there's a lot of books that have a lot of theory, a lot of nice stories, the pivotal moment where I crashed that car and I was drunk. And, there's those kind of books, which I love. This one actually has step-by-step action points. Go to this website, click this link, do this, do this, do this. And it's very, very tactical. So I think both types are great. If you're looking for a tactical book, this one, I think, is a 10 out of 10 as far as tactical on growing your seven-figure agency. And if you do nothing else, if you never work with Josh, never go to any of his events, but you get the book, I'm pretty sure that you have a really good chance at hitting that seven-figure mark. Now, if you want a community and actually talk with Josh and other people who've done it, I think that's the other piece of the puzzle that's going to help you get there. Josh, any last words of wisdom around scaling an agency, around creating content that I may not have covered that you want to share with my audience?
I would say the only thing is on the content front, we all have to start somewhere. We can always improve, right? So usually your first version of a video or a webinar that you do, you're not going to be happy with it. But it's with the reps and the continuous doing of it that you improve. And that's really how you're going to stand out from the crowd. That's how you're going to distinguish yourself. So start now with whatever system that you've got, with whatever tools you've got, and be in that 3% that actually create content, because it will pay dividends in your business and in your life.
Love it. Guys, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. The fact that you're here listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube tells me that something Josh said in this interview struck a nerve with you. And it was interesting. So I encourage you, click the links down below. We're going to have links to his social media, his websites, and especially the 7-figure roadmap. The 7-figure agency roadmap. Is that right?
7-figure agency roadmap.
Grab the book, guys. Grab that link. And I will see you in the next podcast.